This is The Reckoning. It is show number 337. This is the 3rd of August, 2026, and 1 hour of unfiltered political truth starts now. Today, we're going to discuss several things. One, that you're only a tax cow to the U.S. government. Two, the mathematics of war. I'm going to go through a few things on that. We're going to discuss Morocco, Spain, and the Ceuta surge, as well as the Twin Falls shooter. But the meat of the mission today, if you will, is we're going to talk about America's Mingala, bioterrorist Anthony Fauci. And so normally I do the rant, but I thought it was more appropriate that we let Roxy do the rant today, and we'll discuss the reasons why if she doesn't cover it. So without further ado, let me hand it over to Rox for the rant.
All right, I'm going to do my best here, like wing things with some bullet points. And I'm going to try not to curse today because, sorry, Mom, but this is a topic that makes me very angry. And if you don't know, the reason why it makes me angry is because I am vaccine injured, and ultimately the reason why I had to get medically discharged at 15 years in active duty service. After being an EOD tech that long, that's your identity, that's your person, that's everything who you are. So it is a very sensitive topic to me. And again, I remember exactly in December 2019 when I saw reports of 55 million people escaped Wuhan. I even looked at my commander a few days after, and I was like, I have a bad feeling something bad's about to happen. How China is, we know how they react. And he was like, oh, you're being silly. Oh, don't worry about it. Nothing has come around like February, March of that following year when stuff starts to ramp up and the government starts to lose their mind. He's like, you're going to come work EOC ops while we're shutting down military to help emergency management control it because even you noticed it, something was coming. So I worked the entire year of all COVID ops just fine, exposed everything, going through, watching all of these reports, watching Dr. Fauci and President Trump. We had it on TV constantly day and night. Never once caught COVID, by the way, just to make that clear. Despite most of the base being on lockdown, I was in a room full of about 50 to 100 people every single day except for weekends unless we were needed to come in. Never caught COVID. So while we were watching these White House briefings and then Dr. Fauci slowly getting involved and all this stuff, I had to understand after everything that happened, basically people have advisors, even President Trump himself. I know a lot of people get mad, but people have advisors, they have experts, they listen to people. They make mistakes. So despite being really pissed later on, years later, about Dr. Fauci's advisor, or what he advised the nation to shut down and how he acted and reacted, I still said maybe he didn't know better, right? Maybe he got bad advice, or maybe it was to the best of his recommendations. I try to understand it no matter how mad. Well, lo and behold, we now have his personal diaries released because the idiot logged in on a government server, which, by the way, if you do that, you should read that little DOD notice of consent in watching you. They can get anything eventually. So we got over 1,000 pages of his personal diaries released recently. This mofo was on the stand up in Congress for the past several years and didn't have a problem talking. Didn't have a problem at all. And all of a sudden, now we know the actual truth with date and timestamps versus what he said on national television. And now he wants to plead the fifth over 100 freaking times. And on top of it, every single thing he said and did was opposite or exactly not true. And that makes it worse because now it's not like accidental negligence. Now it's actually purpose negligence. And I wonder who was lining his pockets with it. He even said himself in the beginning of this that masks will not work and keep you from getting sick. And then he reverses into, well, we must wear masks, we must do that. I have admitted I understand the original goal of the mask was to slow the spread, to try to catch it from spread, but it doesn't really work that well, and especially like everything and all the lockdowns and all that stuff, it doesn't make sense. But I guess we learned in his diaries is even worse than the actual truth. The truth of the matter is 10 times absolutely worse. So he insisted over and over and over it didn't come from a lab, no matter what, even to the vice president and president himself. That is literally like on so many levels, breaking so many federal laws. I don't even know how to explain how crazy that is. And he put in there that they even had more proof that it came from a lab. But he insisted over and over, even directly to his leadership who employed him, and it is a crime to falsify information. And now we know for a fact with the diary release that lab. And all the market was a super spreader, because I remember the whole cover ups, and this is what I'm saying. I remember in December 2019, because I saw the Chinese reports and how they are. They cover things up. They were making little doctors disappear who was trying to warn their locals. And then they still let 55 million people escape Wuhan before they locked down their own government. It was that bad. It's pretty bad if China does something and then publicly even is doing anything. It's probably out of control at that point. So, and then Dr. Fauci, with his growing God complex, took the shot himself after everything. This COVID shot, he took it himself, right, on live television to prove its safety. And then he had a pulmonary infraction, Dr. A, correct me if I said that terribly, and hid it from the public and the public eye, despite he loved to talk on TV constantly with his newfound complex that he was the God of all gods. He was the science. Remember that? He was the science. Everything he said had to be true. And if you don't know what that little condition is, it is lung tissue caused by a blocked blood supply. Basically, he had a blood clot in his lung. So he had one of the adverse reactions knowing that it's not true. And then Biden comes into office. And then Biden almost immediately, I'm talking about day one, drops a DOD presidential order for all of the DOD will be mandated vaccines are fully vaccinated by November of 2020. Knowing of the adverse reactions, knowingly doing that, and again, we didn't know this at the time. I never thought that they would try to take down half of the government or half the world, because if COVID didn't get you, the only other way they were going to get you with these mRNA vaccine genetic therapy, because that's what it is, which even if it had good intentions, that is a way to manipulate DNA and change genetics. That is how it's been studied. Even the inventor of it himself, I believe, said this was a terrible idea for vaccines. Absolutely. This is not how this works. It has the potential of harm, and you can't just rush something like that. They still have stuff that they're working on that they have not released, and they've been working on it for years, because that's how long it takes. But you don't make vaccines that way. I just really didn't believe that they would do that to the government, but they did, knowingly. And even he himself, the science, had an adverse reaction and did it anyway, and advised it anyway. They shut down schools even harder. Trump did not do this. He left most of it up to the government, and when we had a temporary shutdown, it was to save resources and supplies. It was temporary and very short-lived, even though Fauci was on there going, we not shut it down. Biden comes in, puts him in head God complex charge even more, making him supreme leader of all of science. And basically, it got worse. And they said that our kids couldn't go to school, and that everybody had to be vaccinated. It was the best thing for the 6 foot social distancing. You must stay home. You can't do this. Even harder. And Biden let him get away with it 10 times harder. He hated our Florida governor because, I'm sorry, tourism is our main staple here in the state of Florida. And also, they're outside in the sun. And you can't just shut down the entire government like that, because states would fail. But all the Democrat states didn't have a problem with it, right? But either way, despite all that, and constantly on TV, hating people saying you can't be at the beaches, you're going to die. They had no problems with the BLM riots and all the rioting done in the streets where people just went left and right, not even 6 foot distancing, because they were burning the whole cities down. Didn't have a word to say about that on national television, despite all of your other TV interviews saying you can't be in school. That doesn't even make sense. So there were doctors who got canceled, their licenses ripped, who were trying to warn of these adverse reactions after they rolled out these vaccines. And they did it to our own military, every DOD employee, knowing that there was an issue. Now, my views on warp speed are, I don't think it was the greatest thing, but Trump never mandated the vaccine. Despite Fauci's encouragement, he never mandated it. But for sure, who did? President Biden, the brain dead president who already had Alzheimer's. And I'll lay my plane there. Sorry.
Rox, you're perfectly okay. So I want to get this timeline right. All right. So Biden takes office after being illegitimately placed in office, and he mandates that the military take the vaccine. So when were you, did you protest, or did you try and extend to not take the shot? What was the climate inside the military? And again, guys, just so I only parallel to this because I was out of the military at the time is the anthrax shot and when we were being forced to take it as pilots. So what was the climate, if you will, from the chain of command then?
So I really wasn't in a position with everything going on to fight it at the time, but basically first responders and emergency personnel like hospital workers and stuff like that were mandated to roll it down out of all the bases that got the shots first. So I was in that lineup group of having those shots first. And basically every command from there on, because presidential orders trickle down, are then those commanders mandated. And so my unit was one of the first ones mandated. There was a lot of people who did not want to take it. But I think in that order, it was you will take action to remove, or if they don't have a super special doctor reason, whatever exemption, then, and trust me, even those got very political in there about we're not giving everybody exemptions. But a lot of people got kicked out and removed from it. Even one of my own supervisors went down too right after he was fully vaccinated.
So quick answer to your question, Larry, started February of 2021 and it was pretty locked down by August.
All right. So Rox, what date did you actually take the shot?
We got orders on the 20th of January that year, literally the 21st. And
Okay.
I think I had to take it within a week or two later because they only gave my a month, and my commander looked at me like, you will go take it, because I was, again, working COVID ops, and he was like, there's nothing wrong with it, but I did, and I did a little research, but I never thought that they would absolutely just slap down on the military, but our commander did give a lot of people pretty harsh orders to go get it now and get it while it was still available.
Okay.
Because there was only so many.
All right. And how quickly after you took the shot did medical problems begin?
I believe it was 2 months later, maybe a little bit less, like between 2 weeks to 2 months later is when most people went down, either neurological, cardiovascular, or some heart condition popped up.
Okay.
Mine is like neurological and probably cardiovascular now, or it's like slowly keeps growing. But I have a brain lesion and a brain tumor that has now formed rapidly as well the past couple of years ago.
Oh, good Lord, Rox. I didn't know that. I'm so sorry to hear that. All right. What was the response of your chain of command when you said, hey, this shot has given me issues?
Well, we didn't want to believe it at first. So it was one of those, we didn't really know. We weren't going to blame it because if you were going to bring it up, you were literally going to be looked at sideways, probably like an alarmist or something like that. But it got to the point where it was beyond a reasonable doubt. Even our own medical, of course, the VA on the way out will not acknowledge it still that it's vaccine injury. They acknowledge the brain lesion. And
Time out. The VA, even after all this evidence that's come out, will not acknowledge that military service members were damaged by a shot that they were forced to get. Is that correct?
No, that's correct.
Sir, they still haven't admitted with the anthrax vaccine. It's called Gulf War syndrome. They tried to blame it on the Gulf.
Trust me, I watched a guy's face swell up like a puffer fish after he took the smallpox vaccine. Guys, military vaccines, you have to do it. I remember thinking it was unbelievable they were making us get a smallpox shot 2 days before we deployed to Afghanistan, but sure enough, that's what they did. All right, Nathan, go ahead, sir. And Rox, I'll come back to you.
In 2008, I believe, the University of Central Florida, they did a study on the anthrax, and they made it to where it was FDA approved. So prior to that, it was never FDA approved. They were experimenting on us with the anthrax as well. My adverse reactions to it were my stomach. It was convulsing. I could drink water, never mind food, and my stomach would convulse and spit it up. General to the location of the injection site, I had other neurological, or still have neurological issues, and I suspect, because it is a mRNA platform as well, that the degenerative disc that I have, that's a VA just passes off, oh, well, you have, it's a genetic disease. But there was a question, okay, well, if these mRNA platforms are modifying our genes, then I could have created the degeneration of this disease.
Unbelievable. All right, so just so everyone knows, and I'm going to, quick segue. The former chief of staff of the U.S. military, Admiral William J. Crowe, was on the board of directors for Bioport, which manufactured the anthrax shot. He talked to his buddy, the Secretary of Defense, and therefore we all were mandated to take the anthrax shot at mass profit to Bioport. So again, that's how criminal this has been going on. We could go back to the Tuskegee Airmen and it's the same thing. Rox, I am horrified at what you told me that the VA still will not acknowledge that COVID caused damage to you. But I want to talk, and again, guys, this just shows you how widespread this is, whole nonsense over COVID. And we still have idiots like the Krasenstein brothers coming on and saying, thank you, Dr. Fauci. All right, Rox, there's an image in segment 1. Please make sure that's posted in the pill. This is an accurate picture of what I think when I think of Dr. Anthony Fauci. It is him wearing Dr. Joseph Mengele's SS uniform. All right, so I call Fauci America's Mengele. He is a bioterrorist. And so I went through his diary and his public statements, and I came up, and there are more, just so with 5 direct lies, the clearest and most discussed discrepancies. Now, they're ranked by AI as to how much evidence is there to prove that he was lying, although AI wouldn't actually say he was lying. And if you try and find that picture of Fauci in an SS uniform, you can't find it on Google. You can't find it on Safari. So again, it just shows you that you really aren't free because they're controlling your information. So let's look at the lies that were told. First, he said in public statements in a 2022 ABC News interview, I had nothing to do with the lockdowns. They always come back and say Fauci was responsible for closing schools. He made similar denials in other interviews in congressional settings, emphasizing that decisions were local or made by the CDC. The truth is that in his diary on March 15th, 2020, Fauci recorded that he convinced New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio to close New York schools, noting that de Blasio is already leaning that way from Fauci's TV comments. He also recommended closing bars and restaurants, and that California Governor Gavin Newsom's chief of staff said the governor decided to close schools, bars, restaurants based on Fauci's TV appearances. He also advised Governor Cuomo, he of the nipple rings, to close schools and later discussed the shelter in place. So that is just a direct lie right there. Go ahead, Nathan.
As well as the VA not recognizing any of the injections. You know, they can make excuses and cover it up, basically. But the PACT Act, which was written by Congress, that explicitly does not mention any vaccines or anything. It just ignores it completely, omits any acknowledgement of vaccines.
Unreal. Go ahead, Dr. A.
Sir, the reason why they'll never admit it on paperwork or any other is because the entire vaccine manufacturer was a DoD project.
It's the largest customer probably in the United States. So, all right, let's continue on with Fauci, and then we'll get to hit the overall themes on this. Excuse me, here at the end. All right, let's talk about the estimated case fatality rate, or CFR. The lie occurred at March 11th, 2020 at a House oversight testimony. He stated that the overall mortality rate, including Chinese data, was about 3%, adjusting for mild asymptomatic cases to somewhere around 1%, or roughly 10 times the seasonal flu average of 0.1%. He had published related caveats around the same period in the New England Journal of Medicine, but the congressional framing emphasized the higher lethality. The truth is, he wrote on February 8th, 2020, after speaking with former CDC Director Tom Frieden, Fauci said that the virus was acting like a bad influenza in transmissibility, and that the true denominator of infections was much larger than the then reported 34,867 cases, which made the CFR, again, CFR stands for case fatality rate, more like 0.2 or 0.3% rather than 2%. So he's lying about the lethality. All right. Now we're getting into the big two and the ones that really, I'm going to be honest with you, they bother me so much I can't even stand it. And you're going to hear how much I can't stand it here in just a few minutes. All right. The wet market origin and early lab leak discussions. The lie. In public statements early on, he and allies heavily promoted a natural zoonotic origin, i.e. a bat, and he pointed to the proximal origin Nature Medicine paper, which concluded lab scenarios were not plausible and characterized lab leak ideas as conspiracy theories or lacking scientific basis in multiple interviews and briefings. For example, through April and May of 2020, he later said he kept an open mind and called for investigation while still favoring the natural origin as most likely the truth. In January 26 of 2020, now we know the market was not the source. It was the amplifier. Somewhere the virus jumped from animals to humans. On January the 31st and February 1st, the entries recorded scientists raising the furin cleavage site and possible deliberate insertion or lab release, accidental or otherwise. On a February 1st call with prominent virologists, only 2 strongly favored pure natural origin, while most thought insertion possible, partly because of Xi Jinping's gain-of-function style work in Wuhan. Fauci noted that they could not let this go. Now, that's the next topic, and I want to pause for that phrase, gain of function. All right, again, I got real heartburn with that phrase, gain of function. It sounds so, who wouldn't want the function to be gained, right? Well, I don't when it leads to lethality and it leads to transmissibility of viruses. Who in the hell do these people think they are playing God with viruses? So let's talk about gain of function research or increasing lethality and transmissibility research and Wuhan funding. The truth. Diary entries, let me go back. The lie was in public testimony in May and July 2021 Senate hearings. Fauci stated under questioning that the NIH has not ever and does not now fund gain of function research in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And he stood by that formulation. Later defenses hinged on narrower regulatory definitions of gain of function or concern versus broader scientific usage, and claims the specific viruses studied could not have become SARS/COVID-2. Now, the diary entries in the early February 2020 discussions explicitly reference Xi Jinping's years of gain of function in coronaviruses to allow adaptation of the spike protein to bind to the human receptor as relevant to the engineered insertion possibility under discussion. All right. Okay, that to me is that's the crux of the issue that I have with him. All right, he lied about our tax dollars going to increase the lethality of a virus. He is basically providing the Chinese Communist Party with bioweapons that they then unleashed on us. Early mask guidance. All right, the lie was Fauci and others said that masks don't really work, and then he changed his mind saying they do, but let's say he wanted to preserve PPE for healthcare workers, personal protective equipment amid shortages. The private note acknowledged the public messaging had been overstated relative to evolving understanding of asymptomatic spread and source control. All right, the truth was, all right, there's no reason to be walking around with a mask. He said that March 8, 2020 on 60 Minutes. Similar messaging emphasized limited benefit for the general public. He said we were probably too strong in saying masks do not work, and then he changed his mind. Now, the diaries show that he was really just focused on himself, on his rising fame, his media coverage, his celebrity contacts, and tensions with the Trump White House. But these aren't really what we care about. What I care about are what was he doing scientifically and in policy. That's what we were paying him for. So primary sources released from the diary, all right, show that he was outright lying. Why he lied, don't really know. I suspect it's the old classic of CYA. Instead of completing his assignment, he was covering his what? So, to end this discussion, I want to do a comparison for those of you that think that I'm being too harsh. I want to provide some historical context. So let's talk about Joseph Mengele, aka the Angel of Death. It's stated that he killed approximately 400,000 people at Auschwitz. But even if he was responsible for all the deaths at Auschwitz, that will put his kill total at 1.1 million. That's still fewer Americans than Dr. Fauci killed. Okay? Mengele was known for brutal medical experimentation. All right? Fauci did that as well. He just did it on puppies rather than on twin human babies. So, again, how many Americans did Fauci murder through his lethality increase of this respiratory disease? 1.12 million people. More than they murdered at Auschwitz. What about worldwide? Okay, the documented deaths we have, all right, worldwide are 7 million people. Okay, that's 1 million more than the Holocaust. Yet Fauci walks free. It's estimated that with all the deaths not attributed to COVID, the number could be as high as 35 million people, which would mean that Fauci killed not just as many as Mengele, or slightly more, but he killed more people than Adolf Hitler did. And he walks free. Why? In my opinion, Fauci is allowed to walk free because he did as the deep state asked. He generated the plandemic, which led to the stolen election of 2020. Being a student of history, I want to add one more note to this. Right at the end of the Roman Republic, okay, as it was dying, they had a dictator. The dictator mandated that some people were declared public enemies. So when a man became an enemy of the Roman state, he was known as hostis publicus, or public enemy. He was then stripped of Roman citizenship and all legal protections were gone. He could be killed by any Roman citizen with impunity. Is there a man more worthy in America of being declared hostis publicus than Anthony Fauci? When an American does what he did and our justice system does not bring him to justice, what are we to do? I do believe that at some point, some American will bring Dr. Fauci to justice. And I hope one of us gets on that jury and ensures that the man or woman walks free after they do what our government will not do and bring this mass murdering, genocidal maniac to justice. It's called jury nullification. We can do it, and it needs to happen. All right, Dr. A, go ahead.
Sir, with as mad and rightly so that you and Rox and others are at Fauci, it still doesn't release the entire truth of the origins of COVID, because while the World Health Organization declared China's first case on the 31st of December, which we actually knew it was earlier than that, 31st of December, within 30 days, 18 other countries reported the same strain. First of all, if you understand viruses and how they mutate, that is not logical. So this did not just escape on people. No, this was released on the rest of the world.
No, I absolutely agree with you. I think it was part of the plandemic so that they could have mass mail-in votes. And I don't think they... Listen, I'm going to be honest with you, and we're going to talk about it in just a bit. I don't think our government cares how many people they kill. They don't. All right, go ahead, John.
They wanted to depopulate the earth, too.
No, there is that. That's Bill Gates' whole agenda. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Larry, and excellent points being made by both you and Angela here. I'm just coming in late in this discussion. As far as Joseph Mengele goes, and numbers in general, I have a hard time understanding. I'm a retired paramedic fireman, so I've been in the healthcare industry down here in South Florida. And South Florida is what I would describe as the comorbidity capital of the world, with the the aged population that we have down here. And from day one, I remember with COVID that it was being told to everyone that 98% recovery rate, 98%. That's pretty damn big as far as recovery goes. And detractors will say, well, even though somebody recovers from COVID, they'll have long COVID and they'll be a cripple. I don't see many cripples in wheelchairs around here. And at that time, I retired. I still had contacts in the healthcare industry. And people would tell me, John, we're not filled to capacity at all. We're not anywhere near capacity. And what is capacity as far as numbers go? When a hospital takes a 2-patient bedroom and cuts it down to 1 because of the biohazard concerns, you've cut your capacity in half. So when a hospital says they're filled to the brim and they're overloaded, well, you cut your capacity in half. Everything COVID and the extra monies they got from the government. So when you talk about these numbers, what are true numbers as far as how many millions actually died from COVID with a 98% recovery rate? And I'll drop it there. Thank you.
I had some issues, tech issues there. Rox or Dr. A, can you respond, please? Because I missed part of what he was saying.
No, he went across multiple topics, but ultimately coming down to the fact that we can't trust any of their data. They made up data to convince us of things, and they incentivize hospitals to make everybody a COVID test.
You are exactly right, which leads me to my next topic. All right. War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. You may recognize that from 1984, which if you listen to this space, you need to read this book. Because the topic is, you are only a tax cow. Now, it's been ruminating in my mind for a long time that we just can't solve this. There's other people on X that are saying this as well, that we're not going to get out of this normally. I don't know how else to put it. So I thought I would just go through a few things that are really grating on me, okay? Because it's not just that I love America. Like Rox and like many of you, I've offered my life to this nation. I love it so much that I was willing to die for it. And I still am. All right, but I feel like my government, as much as I love my country, I hate my government right now. Okay, because I think they are violating the very essence of what it is to be an American. So let's talk about freedom of speech. Do you really have it? No, you don't. You can be deboosted, censored, shut up, harassed by officers in the name of safety and security, designated to go to a safe space or a protesting zone, being told that you are a free speech hazard when you're trying to actually exercise your free speech rights. So it doesn't really exist anymore. I've been deboosted on X for over a year now, solidly over a year. I've literally lost 600 followers in over a year. Now, maybe it's just bad show on my part. That's fine, but I'm not gaining any, and I was gaining steadily, all right, usually 50 to 100 a week for a long time until some clown down at X headquarters decided I needed to be deboosted. And so I am. He even uses Grok, X's own AI program, and it says, yes, you are deboosted. Dr. A, how long were you shut down out of Facebook for trying to tell the truth about COVID-19?
Oh, goodness. I've never gone back, but I had an account with a group, 17,000 members in the group, and I could post in my own group and they wouldn't see it. So it was bad.
All right. I know we've all got stories of that. Southern, you've probably got them as well. It just, when they control what can be said, when anyone controls what can be said, you don't have freedom of speech. Well, what about the right to assemble? Let me ask you guys a question. Do you really think any mass right-wing protest would ever occur again after what they did to the January 6ers? I don't think so. All right. They will not allow you to peacefully protest. They set up free speech zones. When I was a child growing up, the entire country was a free speech zone. All of it, every bit of it. All right. What about your freedom to worship? Really? They closed the churches, and almost every church agreed to close. An exception is Jack Hibbs in California. He didn't close his church. Well, at least they were closing all public places, right? No. Strip clubs in San Diego stayed open. Casinos in Nevada stayed open. Such was the hypocrisy. What about your right to bear arms? So now we're on to the Second Amendment. The right to bear arms is constantly under attack. Red flag laws will be used to strip you of your rights if a Democrat wins in 2028. They are in use now. The FBI regulates every gun sold in America through background checks. Do you really believe these background checks aren't creating registers of guns for them to come and seize? And weak sheriffs like our own Tracy Murphy here in Denton County will only be too happy to allow this. He allowed the FBI to arrest Stuart Rhodes. He will not defend your constitutional rights. As far as the Third Amendment, well, I don't think they're quartering soldiers yet, but I was thinking about this. Why would you quarter soldiers with people? One, to save you the expense of doing it if you were the British Crown, but two, so that you could actually suppress that revolutionary house. They don't need to do that. They've got Alexa, they've got Siri, they've got cameras on your TVs, cameras on your computers, cameras on your iPhones. They can probably turn your iPhone into a listening device now, all right? They have constant surveillance of you, which leads me to the Fourth Amendment. It's dead. Okay, give up on it. More and more flock cameras go up every single day. Very little protest is being done about it. They can track you everywhere you go with your cell phone and then visually verify you with flock. All right. How long before they just launch the Hydra carriers that use the Zola algorithm and eliminate the undesirables? Seems like a bad movie. Actually, that was a really good movie, The Winter Soldier. But I'm not kidding. How long before they say, well, Larry Brock's social media platforms say that he is a threat because he actually loves this country and he wants it to remain free, so we're going to go and kill him. That's what we're going to do. What about the Fifth Amendment? The Fifth Amendment was actually used by the judge to keep me in prison. I chose to remain silent. He said, well, he's shown no remorse, so he's going to stay in jail. And then Fauci has full immunity, okay, which means he can't hide behind it, and yet he's doing it. And he did it 111 times. Trust the science? To what? Take the fifth? You got to be kidding me. Okay, what about your right to a speedy trial? That's gone. Look at the J5 pipe bomber Patsy, the Charlie Kirk murderer, every J6er. It's gone. They just keep you in jail ad infinitum without a right to a trial. What about the right to an impartial jury? Tell that to any J6er. Okay, the government routinely uses classified or redacted, and they hide evidence, all right? Now, does that evidence actually, are they required to provide it to you that if it would clear you? Yes, it's the Brady Law. They violate that. But their real purpose in classifying and redacting everything is to ensure that we don't find out their own violations of the law. Think about how they used FISA against us. Okay, it is not called the Department of Just Us for a reason. Now, the Eighth Amendment was taken away from J6ers when they violated their own rules and kept people in solitary for months or years. Stuart Rhodes spent a year in solitary confinement. The 10th Amendment, that's a joke. The federal government's in everything and is everywhere. There are no states' rights anymore. The Constitution, it mandates that war be declared by Congress, yet 100,000 plus Americans have died in wars since the end of World War II, which was the last declared war. And we're in the beginning of another undeclared war. So what about taxes? Well, the tax rate in 1776 was less than 5%, usually around 1 to 3%, and the modern rate's between 25 and 35%, and we do nothing. And what are we getting out of it? All the things that I just discussed. I encourage everyone to do what I'm going to do. I refuse to look at or repost any Republican anymore from any hearing because they're nothing but talk. Nothing. There is absolutely zero purpose that I can see in even having a legislative branch anymore. Do they pass a budget, which is their primary responsibility? No. Do they declare wars, which is another constitutionally enumerated power? No. They don't pass the laws that we want passed, i.e. the SAVE Act. They don't defend our border. They are nothing but 535 leeches on the American taxpayer. Our government lets Fauci, okay, a bioterrorist, a genocidal mass murderer, walk free. Yet it routinely releases rapists back onto the streets. It imports the dregs of the world to replace American laborers. It does nothing to safeguard our elections, to the point where I now believe they want the ability to rig it, the Republicans and the Democrats. We are lied to and gaslit by our government so often we can't even feel the truth anymore. The press, our elected representatives, they don't tell us anything. Do you remember these words that I quoted last week? Whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation in such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. We talked last week about, can we vote our way out of this? I don't see a way to do that right now. It is driving me insane. I need somebody to restore some hope for me. Rox, you're an eternal optimist, and I bless you for it. And I actually usually am an optimist as well. But folks, this is just getting worse. And if Donald Trump, the man we elected, gets in and gets us involved in another war, gets in and doesn't give us the truth about Fauci, gets in and doesn't give us the truth about Epstein, gets in and doesn't stop the weaponized system of government, what can we do? If the guy we elected, the strong man that we elected to get in there, is not going to do this, how do we solve this problem? Somebody help me. Tell me how our system of government will be responsible and will restore our Bill of Rights, will restore the Constitution. They broke it, and the same villains are not going to fix it. How do we fix this? Go ahead, Rox.
I think that they're doing the best that they can with what they have, and without being that tyrant that everybody wants them to be, because if you introduce it, then you confirm all their fears. And then you also, in a weird way, even though we know they're going to do it anyway, you're going to give them permission to do it back harder to us. Everything you do, especially in government, has a double-edged sword. Things with good intentions can be used for bad. I've said this many times. Unfortunately, it's a very delicate dance and balance. And if we did it right away, I think he is exposing the Fauci stuff. Come on, we got his diaries. I think he is working behind the scenes. I think he's doing the best he can with what he has. And the people he's appointed over it, because the man never sleeps, hardly. And he keeps working. He's got hard chargers right behind him. But it's all been delegated out as well, because that's just how that works. But he is trying. I think they are trying to do everything that he promised, but there's also other major issues first sometimes. And the way things have to unfold, they just have to. They only have 2 years of Republican control. Right now, maybe the Democrats, how crazy they are, we'll probably keep it, hopefully. But historically, we don't. So we got to prepare for that, too, on top of it.
I don't doubt his intent, Rox. It's his staff. We keep saying that, but just Sunday, Todd Blanche said the weaponization fund is dead. So they now know that they can get away with imprisoning Americans that protest against their stolen election. Again, there is no peace with this government, all right? Dr. A, you ran for Congress, all right? I know you would have been a good American. Do you not see, am I wrong on any of my, what I'm going to call theories on the rights that have been stripped from us?
So I'm going to say I agree with Roxy, sir. I feel like the mountains that need to be climbed in order to expose the amount of fraud and corruption and things that's been going on are so huge. They have to reveal them slowly, or people are going to literally flip their lid and lose it. When RFK Jr. was put into Secretary of HHS, I cheered and cried at the same time, because I know what he has to overcome is almost insurmountable for any one human being to do in a 4-year period of time. And I know that that's all he had, because that's all Trump had. It's huge. And I will say this administration has done more to help Second Amendment rights, especially in blue states, than any administration in my lifetime. So I am here clapping like a seal for that. And I do believe there is more coming, but I'm not the one that's like, oh, just wait, it's around the corner. Somebody's going to save you. No, that's why I ran for Congress. I believe that good people have to step up and work hard, or we're never going to get there. So I'm sad that I didn't get that opportunity. I am even sadder because the guy who won, it looks to be an accident. He did absolutely nothing to come in second place. So it's back to the incumbent.
I know.
So here we go.
All right, Southern, I'm coming to you in just a second, but let me just ask this question, all right? If you have a boil, is it better to just let it fester for a few days or better to lance it? If you're going to rip a Band-Aid off, and I have very hairy arms, and so I hate Band-Aids with a deep purple passion, all right, is it better to just rip it off or peel it off slowly? My point is, there is no peeling off. This is such a monster boil that it's got to be lanced immediately, and we're just not doing it. And it's because the personnel don't have the will to do it. I think Susie Wiles is a deep state functionary, a Bushy inside the Republican Party, and I think she has led to more appointments of Bush-like people inside the Republican Party and on his staff. We had a do-nothing attorney general that is followed by a Democrat attorney general. This is not good. There seems to be absolutely no interest at all in bringing any justice to anybody that did anything. Reference the Epstein case, reference the DOJ's harassment of January 6ers. I could go on and on. There is no justice in this country anymore. And if you don't have a justice system, you don't have a country. Southern, do you have any hope for this system?
I don't.
I know, but all right. We're going to move on to the next topics as soon as Nathan goes. Nathan, go ahead, sir. Give me about 30 seconds or less.
Yes, sir. You mentioned about the judicial, and some were picked from the Southern District of New York, and that's one of the most corrupt in the nation, to my knowledge.
Yes, sir. I don't know why we continue to put bad judges in. All right, so Roxy, I did ask somebody in the audience just randomly, and they said they could hear me. So don't know what's going on there. So let's talk about the mathematics of war. All right, so I got real curious. How many times has President Trump threatened massive military strikes against Iran and then not carried them out or canceled them at the last minute? Now, according to the liberal rag, The Independent, which is a UK newspaper, he's done this 8 times. I don't think anybody's taking him seriously anymore. I'm certainly not. I know he's not. He's not going to do a thing. All right. This is why you don't threaten unless you're willing to follow through. I learned this as a parent of a 2-year-old daughter that was into everything. Be careful what you say you're going to punish her with, because you're going to actually have to do it if you do. And yet our president doesn't know this. So let's get back to, when was the last time that the military really won a war? Rox, in your opinion, really won it?
When we won a war?
Mm-hmm.
Is there any winners in war? Because, I mean, it kind of sucks.
I'd say World War II we won pretty dramatically. But after that, do you think we've won any of them?
I wouldn't say win, especially with what Biden did pulling out of Afghanistan. Even Iraq, I helped close down Kirkuk, Iraq, and they, of course, what was said versus the reality of it was not the truth. And we left a lot of gear over there, too, because the excuse was it was too expensive. It would cost more money to take back all that equipment. And I was like, why can't we ship it to Afghanistan still? Too much money. It's not worth the money. And I was like, this is insane to me. Yep. Even disabling all those vehicles, guess what? They just re-enable them because they're not idiots. Even if they live in the sand, okay, they're not idiots. They have knowledge and technology, too, and can fix stuff. And we just equip them for their next terrorist organization, and it's just going to happen over and over. So the war on terrorism is, I think, nonstop, and it's probably never going to stop unless we completely, I don't know, didn't we fund the terrorism ourselves in USAID?
Yep, pretty much. Yep.
Okay.
All right. So
we still are.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a cycle that is super hard, but it's all corrupt. There's so many levels of corruption on this that I can't even begin to explain it, but it's hard to wrap your mind around. And it's really sad and sick because it shouldn't be this way. Not in today's world.
All right.
Just hate.
So I'm with you, but I would argue still that World War II is the last real war that we've actually won. So let's use a little scientific method here. Now, my hypothesis is that a nation will surrender when a significant amount of its fielded forces is destroyed. I'm using World War II as the experiment/testing phase. So let's analyze this. The approximate percentages of fielded mobilized forces killed in World War II based on historical estimates. The Americans mobilized between 16 to 16.4 million men. Our military deaths were between 407 to 417,000. That means that we had 2.5% of our fielded forces killed. Germany mobilized 18.2 million men. All right. Military deaths were 4.3 to 5.3 million. All right. Including missing and many POW deaths. The percentage killed there was 25 to 30%. All right. What about the United Kingdom? They mobilized about 5.9 million men. 183 to 407,000 killed. All right. That's about a 6 to 7%. Japan mobilized 9.1 to 9.7 million men. All right, they had about 2.1 to 2.3 million killed, or 22 to 25%. So that sounds all good, right? Okay, you've got the two losers, Japan and Germany, above 20%. Well, here comes the oddball. The Soviet Union mobilized 34.5 million men, and they lost between 8.7 to 11 million men. All right. Using the $8.7 million figure, all right, that's about 25 to 31%, and they kept fighting. All right, so the conclusion is logically that 20 to 25% of fielded forces led to the surrender of the two Axis powers, but the Soviet Union did not surrender. So in Operation Epic Fury, the name for the Iranian operation, using more commonly cited lower to mid military death numbers, it's 1,200 to 5,000 against their 610,000 active personnel. That means that we're about 0.2% to under 1% of active military manpower. There is no way a nation surrenders with that little military death. All right, so my hypothesis is therefore not 100% verifiable, as the Soviets did not surrender with over 20% losses, but the Germans and Japanese did. All right. So the conclusion that I have is that without ground invasion, we cannot win unless there is a repeat of the events of August 6th and August 9th, which we have zero appetite to do, zero. All right, and this in a pithy way, and they're going to move on to the other topics. But I want to tell you personally that I believe it would be better to be hit by a 1945 atomic bomb, not one of the modern thermonuclear disasters, than it would be to be led by Democrats in government. And why do I base that on? I base that on looking at pictures of Hiroshima and Detroit in both 1945 and in 2015. It's far better to be hit by a bomb than to have Democrats in power. I'm just going to leave it with that. All right. Rox, if you could post that picture in the pill of the Hiroshima and Detroit. All right. Dr. A, what in the heck is going on in Spain?
Give me 10 seconds.
Okay.
You mean like all the people that died rushing into it, like, I don't know, under Biden, they did an R-board?
I know, it did. Boy, it did remind me of that. I saw those pictures and I'm like, oh, southern border a few years ago.
Yep. Sorry, I had to walk away from my computer. Okay, so if you also look at the pictures that Rox is going to put up, there's a picture of the geography. So when people talk about Morocco and Spain, well, they don't actually touch. There's a water border. Oh, but no, that's not right. So let's talk a little bit about Morocco, Spain, and the Ceuta, or it's Ceuta. People pronounce it different ways. It's something that doesn't really register in American news, but reveals a lot about borders, politics, and what happens when a country actually tries to move forward. Late last week, tens of thousands of mostly young Moroccan men surged into the Spanish enclave of Ceuta. Estimates ran as high as 50 to 60,000 in a matter of hours, by land and by swimming around the barriers. Within days, the vast majority were returned to Morocco, And this was not classic emigration. It was a sudden, chaotic border event. And to understand why it matters, you have to understand the unique geography and the political currents around it. Ceuta and its sister enclave, Melilla, are Spanish cities on the North African coast. So they're not touching Spain, but they're Spanish cities, okay? They're fully part of Spain and therefore part of the European Union. They're the only land borders between the EU and the African continent. Morocco surrounds them, these cities, on three sides and has long claimed them. The populations inside these cities are mixed, but a large share of the residents are Muslim, Arabic-speaking, and ethnically North African, culturally and familiarly very close to the people living just across the fence in Morocco. That ethnic and cultural overlap makes the border feel porous in ways Americans rarely experience. It's not like the U.S.-Mexico border in culture or history. It's tighter, denser, and more intimate. Now add the political layer. Spain is currently led by Pedro Sanchez and a left-leaning coalition. His government has taken a more progressive line on migration and has clashed internally over how strictly to enforce returns. A recent Spanish court ruling, very recent, made it harder to immediately turn back people arriving by sea. So again, these towns touch other places by land, but if you swim around a barrier, well, I came by sea. That legal change combined with social media amplification created an opening that thousands of young people exploited almost overnight. Across the border sits Morocco, a country that's been deliberately choosing a different path. In 2020, Morocco joined the Abraham Accords, normalizing relations with Israel. In return, the United States recognized Morocco's claims over the Western Sahara. Since then, Morocco has pursued industrialization, foreign investment, automotive and aerospace manufacturing, renewable energy, and tourism. Growth has been solid. Infrastructure is expanding. It's one of the more pragmatic, outward-looking success stories in the region. That progress sits next to a long-standing rivalry with Algeria. The Morocco-Algeria land border has been closed since 1994. Diplomatic relations were severed in 2021, largely over the Western Sahara dispute and Morocco's decision to normalize with Israel. Algeria backs the Polisario Front. Morocco rejects that. The two countries view each other with deep suspicion. So when large numbers of young Moroccans suddenly test the Spanish enclaves, regional actors watch closely, some hoping to see Morocco destabilized or embarrassed. The 2025 Gen Z protests inside Morocco already showed real frustration among young people over jobs, healthcare, and education versus spending on prestige projects. These kids have internet. They can see how people are living in Europe, right? They want it. Those grievances are genuine, but the speed, coordination, and information campaigns around the Ceuta surge also fit a broader pattern we've seen in other youth mobilizations from parts of Asia to Latin America, where real discontent is amplified through digital networks and NGO soft power channels. For Americans, the takeaway is this. When a North African country chooses peace deals, economic openness, and Western partnerships, it becomes a target for pressure. Migration surges, information operations, and border crises become tools. Spain's left-leaning leadership creates policy openings. The ethnic closeness between the enclave populations and Morocco makes the optics complicated, and Algeria's rivalry supplies an interested spectator, if not more. Morocco is trying to build something better. The question is whether the networks that thrive on chaos will allow it to succeed, or whether every step forward will be met with another sudden surge designed to make that progress look fragile. That's the story Americans should really be watching. And I want to just say thank you again to Self Medical and Data Republican Small R for all their hard work in helping me understand what's really going on in Morocco.
Unreal. Now, there's a viral video of a woman welcoming all of these invaders into Spain. And my understanding is that woman was subsequently killed. Is that just right-wing nonsense, or did that really happen?
I honestly don't even think that's a current video. I think that's an older video. And most of the people that we're discussing right now haven't even made it physically to the country of Spain yet. They only made it to Ceuta or Melilla, and they were going to have to wait thereafter for ferries to get over to Spain, where they could start the process of trying to stay for a month and then gain access to Europe. So I believe that video is old, sir, but I don't know the details enough to know.
Okay. I will say this. When I was in Saudi Arabia, I would talk with them about politics, and usually over a bottle of scotch. And for those of you that don't know it, Saudis love their scotch, Johnny Walker Black, which I despise scotch. I'm a bourbon guy. But anyway, they said that they need to take Spain back because Spain once belonged to them. So I think it was called the Islamic Maghreb, and they want Spain back. They're not going to get it. It took us 700 years to drive the Muslims out, and then it took an inquisition to get rid of the rest of them. So again, that's the price of being infested with Muslims. So I digress for a second. Southern, can you tell us what went on? I think it was Twin Falls. Is that correct, this weekend?
Yes, sir. I'll make it real quick. So it was on August 1st, which was Saturday. It was about 2 p.m. Mountain Time, their time. So a lone gunman, which we now know his name is Chad Williams, he was 24. He went into the In-N-Out there, which has only been open for a week, and decided to shoot people. He also engaged with a man that we now know as Jordan Salinas outside. He was a civilian. He decided to engage on his own. We give him props for it. He also engaged with a trooper inside. Then he moved from there to a visitor center that was 0.1 miles. So it was very close in proximity, where he shot at least 2 Teslas. The visitor center was already locked down. That's why nobody inside was injured. They later found him dead of a self-inflicted gunshot wound, and 3 died total. 7 were injured. 2 have been released. I forget how many were in critical compared to stable.
Unreal. Now, do we have any, I just heard you say that he shot some Teslas. Do we have any motivation? The stuff I saw, we didn't have a motive yet.
I've looked into several social media accounts. I've looked into his family's social media accounts. I don't see anything that leads to any answers, any of that.
All right. And one more question for you, ma'am, and it's slightly off topic, but I know it's a topic that you covered for quite some time. I saw over the weekend that James Tallarico, who is a twink running for senator here in the state of Texas, he had a meeting where he was pandering to African Americans, and you had someone come up and say that it was a tragedy what had happened to Carmelo Anthony. What did you think of that? Because I'm going to tell you what I thought of it afterwards, or his reply.
Personally, I laughed at him. I know he's pandering just to get their votes, and that I don't know if he actually believes anything that he actually says. I don't believe he's a true pastor, because I've heard of some of the stuff that he said. None of that is the Bible. He twists all of it to believe him to whatever he wants.
Yep.
So I laugh at him generally when he says anything.
I would laugh, except he's got a legitimate chance of winning because Republicans are so demotivated. And I don't think I'm helping the case any, but I just don't think we can fight our way out of this. Notice, I want you to go and vote, all right? But I despise the choices that we have. Now, I don't despise Ken Paxton. I think he's going to be a great senator, and he was a fighter for all the right things. But Tallarico is just, he's a complete and total clown. But where I was going with that is, the problem with conservatives is when we win, we want to be magnanimous in victory, all right? But we can't. All right, you have to keep fighting the left because they keep trying to rewrite history that just isn't true. They keep trying to say that Carmelo Anthony was acting in self-defense. We can go back even further in time. They keep trying to say all of the things like that COVID-19 was a legitimate threat and that Fauci did what was good. We have to fight them every day. There's no truth that we can rest on because they serve the father of lies. It's who they are. I'm sorry, but if you are a Democrat, you cannot be a Christian and a Democrat at the same time. It doesn't work anymore. Go ahead, Dr. A.
Sir, with regards to the situation that Southern set up in Idaho, young and murder-suicide makes me think he might be connected to some of these Discord groups that have been pushing this behavior among young people. And I truly hope that the law enforcement has gone there and is looking through his own stuff.
I think, Southern, I think I saw either you or someone posted that he only had like one photo on Facebook. Is that correct?
His Facebook is been scrubbed. I'm not going to say if it was him or if it was somebody else.
Exactly. So who else's Facebook got scrubbed? Didn't Crooks's Facebook get scrubbed?
They always do.
It's mind-numbing. All right. I wish I had better news. I'll try and come up with something good to end the show on, because I feel like we need to do that from now on. All right. But I'm going to go ahead and end the show with a couple of quotes. All right. Let me go down to them. All right. And the first one is from Pablo Picasso. I'm going to just segue for a second. I met this person one time, and I was told before I had met her that she was a really attractive person. So I'm expecting to meet an attractive person. And I actually see her, and I swear she was right out of a Pablo Picasso painting. I guess to me, and everyone says, I don't know if this, but symmetry of a face. If a face is asymmetric, it's perceived differently by different people. And to me, a very asymmetric face is not very nice looking. So anyway, Pablo Picasso painted a lot of asymmetric faces. And so every time I see this woman, all I can think of is Pablo Picasso, or anytime I see the name Pablo Picasso, all I can do is think of this woman. But anyway, he said, every positive value has its price in negative terms. The genius of Einstein led to Hiroshima. Okay. And then Dr. Viktor Frankl said, forgive me, I didn't mean Dr. Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl said, since Auschwitz, we know what man is capable of, and since Hiroshima, we know what's at stake. Guys, we got to get control of this government again. We've got to elect good Republicans like Dr. A, like myself. We've just got to do better, because the ones that we have in office right now, they're just not doing the job that we elected them to do. And the fact that we haven't got the SAVE Act passed is going to cost us the midterms. I truly believe if Trump had moved on day one with executive orders to pass the SAVE Act in all but name, all right, we wouldn't be having this issue, and we would not come close to losing the midterms again. We've seen how corrupt California is in the vast majority of our states, which still allow mass mail-in ballots. All right, I realize when I say the vast majority of states, I meant the ones that allow mail-in ballots. We don't have legitimate elections. So we don't have legitimate elections. We don't have a legitimate justice system. We pay 7 times what our founding fathers pay in taxes. We don't have a Bill of Rights. We don't really have a constitution anymore because our own government doesn't follow it. What are we doing? All right. On that note, let's all go forward and conquer this week. Do what's best for your family. As Rock says, go out and touch grass. And let's have a great week. And I will see you next Monday. And I will end on a positive note next weekend. All right. God bless each and every one of you.